Okay, thank you so much to everybody for being here today to talk about this incredibly important and urgent matter surrounding the coronavirus and COVID-19 and allowing us to communicate all these incredibly important executive orders out to the public. Today is going to be a little bit of an unusual format. It's going to be a two-part news conference. First, we're going to be talking about public health concerns regarding capacity at bars and restaurants in particular. And then the second part of our news conference will focus on price gouging and the governor's new executive order. So for part one, we have 7 different speakers. We have Michigan State Police Colonel Joe Gasper, Department of Health and Human Services Director Robert Gordon, Ingham County Health Officer Linda Vail, Oakland County Executive Dave Coulter, Livingston County Prosecutor and Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Michigan President Bill Valancourt, Michigan Restaurant Association President and CEO Justin Winslow, and finally Michigan Licensed Beverage Association Executive Director Scott Ellis. And again, I want to thank everybody for being here on such short notice to talk about these important concerns today. So following Governor Whitmer's declaration of state of emergency in response to COVID-19, she issued an important executive order that temporarily prohibits large assemblages at events. And we are here to talk about the essential public health protections established by that directive, especially in light of St. Patrick's Day festivities to take place this Tuesday, and how we must respect capacity issues in bars and restaurants, at casinos, and anywhere at all that people congregate. And right now, I'd like to introduce Robert Gordon from the Department of Health and Human Services to talk more about this.
Thank you, Attorney General, and good afternoon. The mission of the Department of Health and Human Services is to protect public health based on science and data and to be as transparent as possible with the public. I want to share some background about the basis for this order as well as for all the actions that we are taking now. The primary means of transmission for coronavirus is person-to-person contact with an individual who is infected. That includes close contact, meaning contact with someone 6 feet or less from the individual speaking or an individual via respiratory droplets. It's also possible that there's transmission via surfaces. Vulnerable populations include the elderly and individuals with compromised immune systems. Given the risks around individuals in close proximity to one another, the step that the governor took, and there may be future steps soon in this regard, but the steps the governor has taken to date include barring most congregations of more than 250 people, including congregations in bars, restaurants, other enclosed spaces, with very limited exceptions. The reason for that limitation is that it is in close proximity with individuals that the disease or the virus is transmitted. In the state of Massachusetts, one conference attended by individuals from other countries has led to more than 3/4 of the known cases in Massachusetts. One conference has led to more than 3/4 of known cases in Massachusetts. So this is a virus that can spread very quickly when individuals are in close proximity to one another. Individuals may believe they are young and therefore they are not at high risk of getting ill. And that, for individuals who do not have compromised immune systems, is true. Young, healthy people are not at high risk for getting ill from coronavirus. But they can become carriers. If they go to a bar, or they go to a restaurant, or they go to any room, frankly, and stand close to people who are carriers, they can become carriers themselves. Then they can go home and see a parent or a grandparent who is at high risk and transmit coronavirus to them. That is the basis for these orders. That is the basis for many of the public health steps we have taken and other steps we'll take in the future. So that is why it is essential that individuals honor these orders, and also that they honor good public health practice. Things like keeping your distance 6 feet from people, avoiding handshakes, using elbow bumps instead, sneezing into elbows, not into hands, and of course staying home when sick. With that, I'm going to introduce Linda Vale, the Ingham County Health Officer.
Thank you, Director Gordon, and thank you, AG Nessel, for having us all here today. Local health departments, local officials, first responders, healthcare providers have been working tirelessly to stop the spread of COVID-19. You have a strong local public health system in our great state of Michigan. For those of us in local public health, disease control and protecting our communities is not just our mandate, it's our mission. It's not just our profession, it's our passion. This work will continue, but we alone cannot stop this coronavirus. This is a pandemic, and everyone has a role to play. Now is our time. This is our time to stay ahead of this and be proactive rather than get behind it and become reactive. It is only by working together across the community and across the state that we can, as many of you have heard, flatten the curve. Flattening the curve means that while people still will likely get infected, we're not all sick at once. It means our healthcare system is not overwhelmed and has the capacity to continue to take care of those who become seriously ill. This is critical, and it is critical in saving lives. How do we flatten the curve? Through social distancing. That means keeping a safe distance away from others. In addition to hand washing, social distancing is one of the most impactful things that people can do at this time. I applaud Governor Whitmer for issuing the executive order banning gatherings of 250 people or more. I urge people to consider going further. We know from fire codes and maximum capacity in buildings that safety is not a one-size-fits-all number. Likewise, in a public health emergency, we have learned since the executive order that one size does not fit all in establishments to truly create social distancing in our counties and in our communities. An establishment with a capacity of 250 is still crowded at 250 if they're allowed in. A larger establishment, say with a capacity of 500 or more, would not be. Also, we've not accomplished social distancing without thinking about establishments that may have a capacity of 150, 200, or even less. Those facilities can still be at max capacity all the time. In Ingham County, we will be ordering licensed food establishments to reduce occupancy by 50%, similar to New York, and now adopted by Oakland County. Please know that COVID-19 is in our communities. Because some people with COVID-19 have only mild illnesses, not all cases are being detected. So we must take strong and proactive action at this time. This is based on science and expertise. Please believe in this science and listen to your experts. Thank you. And I now introduce David Coulter, Oakland County Executive.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to be here, and I want to thank the Attorney General and the Governor for their leadership in bringing us all together, because together it's going to take us all to combat the spread of coronavirus. We also know that the actions that we take now, today, will help slow the spread of this virus and save lives. So while we do not act with a sense of panic, we must act with a sense of urgency. In Oakland County yesterday, we ordered that all bars, restaurants, entertainment facilities, and physical fitness facilities reduce their capacity to 50%. As my Ingham County colleague just noted, the number isn't as magical as the distance and the size. We need to be distancing ourselves from each other, and so in Oakland County we've taken the step of 50%. That starts tomorrow. Let me just tell you that while that may seem drastic to some folks, we're going to continue to monitor that, and as this virus spikes, we may have to take even additional measures. So the worst is not over. In fact, we know the worst is yet to come, and so we all have to do our part to practice the social distancing, respect each other, be kind to each other as we move through this virus. Just some additional measures that we're taking in Oakland County that I wanted you to know about. We're going to increase sick time for our employees as appropriate, an additional 80 hours for full-time employees. We think it's important that our employees are not penalized during this time, and I encourage other businesses and counties to do the same. We're going to begin to work our employees where possible remotely and make that as easy and convenient for them as possible. The convenience of our customers obviously is also very important to us, and we're going to drive as many services online, and those that we can't get online we will begin to suspend, such as paying taxes and fees and those things. There will be a grace period. We're working through those issues now. But just understand, and Oakland County is not any different than many businesses and other across the state, we all have to be thinking creatively about how we limit exposure to this virus. The virus is not new, but the virus is new, but as you're going to hear today, our response is not. And I think that if we do everything that we know how to do, that we've done in the past, and that we know is sound science now, we can limit the effects of this virus. So I want to again applaud the Attorney General and the state of Michigan and all the health workers that are working so hard over the last couple of weeks and more to make sure that we protect our public. Thank you very much. And I want to introduce Justin Winslow, the President and CEO of the Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association.
Good afternoon. The Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association represents nearly 18,000 restaurants and hotels and over 600,000 members of Michigan's workforce across the state of Michigan. These are pretty severe times for the industry, as they are for all of us right now. This industry is at the forefront, economically taking a very significant hit, and it is rare for me in this position to come and advocate on behalf of restrictions to the industry, but that's where we find ourselves. We are in a once-in-a-multi-generational pandemic, and the threat is serious enough that it is critical for all of us to operate with an abundance of concern, care, and caution. So we have strongly recommended to all of our members, heed the governor's executive order, heed David Coulter in Oakland County's new order, which is at 50% capacity. It's important to know that a lot of our members, most of our members, are finding ways to voluntarily do this because they know it's necessary, because they're human beings themselves. They care about their workforce, they care about their guests, and the business is that important to them personally. It's also important during this time to realize that the industry, while still open, is there for you for carryout, for delivery, and are ramping up efforts, while already significant in terms of sanitation and safety, doubling down on those efforts to make sure that their guests, their customers feel safe during a challenging time for all of us. Thank you. It is my honor to now bring up Scott Ellis, Executive Director for the Michigan License and Beverage Association.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the Attorney General Dana Nessel and everyone else here today, as well as those watching at home. With St. Patty's Day coming up this week, which happens to be one of the busiest days for business in the hospitality industry, we understand the importance of following the governor's gathering guidelines in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Bars and restaurants are known as gathering places, so it's going to be a tough year for these businesses that rely on days like St. Patrick's Day. when many are already losing business because of canceled events. But we also understand doing what's right and keeping people safe is our goal. I want to reiterate what Justin said. We in our industry want to make sure we are on the front line to preventing any spread of this, because we know we're on the front line of gathering places. By following the gathering guidelines, we hope to avoid a complete shutdown of bars and restaurants throughout the state. This is something that's happened in other parts of the world and would cripple the Michigan's hospitality industry. But hopefully, by being diligent now, we can avert a larger crisis. With that in mind, we hope the governor and the legislature will be there for the bars and restaurants and owners and their employees moving forward. Many face irrecoverable losses if we don't get this under control. And I want to point out there, this is where we applaud the forward thinking now to get a hold of this and try to prevent it getting any farther, to prevent a larger crisis down the road. I urge everyone to please remember to continue to support the bars and restaurants that you frequent. They need your help if you want to help them endure this unfortunate situation. Trust me, bars and restaurants throughout the state are taking proactive measures to ensure their establishments are safe and sanitary. Ordering carry-out food and beverages is another great option. During these unprecedented times, it is very important that we all work together to keep us safe as possible. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce Colonel Gasper of the Michigan State Police.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis, and thank you, Attorney General Nessel, for the opportunity to speak to you. I am Colonel Joe Gasper with the Michigan State Police, and I just want to assure everybody that we are on the roads in full force, ready to continue to provide public safety for the state of Michigan in this time of crisis. I'd also like to remind everybody that we are under an executive order that does limit mass gatherings, and violations of that may come with consequences. The state police stands ready to partner with local law enforcement, statewide, and the Attorney General's office to make sure that we are providing the best public safety during this time of crisis. Thank you. It's now my opportunity to introduce Bill Valancourt, the Livingston County Prosecutor and the President of the Prosecuting Association of Michigan.
Thank you, Colonel Gasper. These are certainly unprecedented times, and the primary focus here is on protecting public safety and ensuring that people stay safe and healthy. And that means not unnecessarily placing your friends, your loved ones, or the community at large at risk. The law enforcement community will be working together to help achieve that goal. But the only way to meet this health crisis is for the entire community to work together to prevent the spread of the virus. No executive order is going to accomplish that if people don't recognize the risk and take common sense action to prevent becoming infected and to prevent spreading this virus. And that's what this order calls for. Common sense action to avoid the large crowds that create a serious health risk. The Attorney General has agreed to take primary responsibility to enforce this order, and local law enforcement will collaborate to facilitate that if it becomes necessary. But it is my hope that people comply with this order, not because it's an order, but because the public recognizes the potential harm that large gatherings present in this unique environment. And it's my hope that every individual will choose not to participate in such a gathering because of that risk and because it's the right thing to do. With that, I'll turn it back over to the Attorney General.
Thanks so much, Bill, and thanks to everybody. And special thanks to Justin Winslow and Scott Ellis and their members all around the state for helping to minimize the spread of COVID-19. No one wants a shutdown of the food and beverage industry, but also no one wants the coronavirus, right? And that's why we are taking these important measures and urging everyone in Michigan to do the same. We want to remind everyone of the importance of keeping people safe and healthy and minimizing the spread of the disease, including on Tuesday, St. Patrick's Day. And I'd like to again thank Director Gordon and Colonel Gasper and Linda Vale, Dave Coulter, and again Justin Winslow and Scott Ellis for joining us today. And now, before we switch topics over to price gouging, I think we'll take any questions that you have about the governor's executive order involving assemblies of 250 or more.
Have you issued any citations related to this yet?
We have not yet. Is when we decided to get together and put together a concerted effort of how we're going to move forward on this. And as you heard Prosecutor Valencourt identify, obviously we have 83 county prosecutors' offices in this state. It was really important to us that these novel cases be handled in a uniform manner, and that's why all of these cases are going to be forwarded to the Department of Attorney General so that we can be handling them. Again, we'll be working in concert with local municipal police, county sheriffs, and Michigan State Police, who will be forwarding these matters to our attention. But at this point, no one yet has been cited. We're hoping that no one has to be cited. My belief is that most proprietors in the industry are good actors and want to be good community members and want to ensure the safety of their patrons and also their employees. And we are very hopeful that they are going to do the right thing, understand what the right thing is to do, and follow the executive order. But in the event there are some bad apples out there that choose not to, then we prepared, ready to defend the law.
Right now there are in order to close bars or restaurants, but what would it look like? What would it take to make that call, and does the governor have the authority to do so?
The governor does have the authority to do that, and there are multiple ways that that can be accomplished. But I will say this, I know that the governor, first of all, I applaud her for her tremendous leadership during this very difficult time for our state. And I know that she is working based on the best possible medical evidence, and that she is constantly in contact with medical experts all over the state and all over the nation. And so as there are further developments, I trust that the governor will do whatever she needs to in the event that there needs to be more stringent orders that are undertaken. But for the meantime, we are operating under these current orders, and we're very hopeful that if everybody follows them, that we'll be able to keep the public safe.
Will it be a misdemeanor offense if bars or restaurants aren't following their restrictions, and do you think that offense is strong enough to get them to say, the money that I could potentially make on St. Patty's Day is not worth this first offense?
Yeah, well, I think what bars and restaurants have to appreciate is that it's much better for them to obey the order as it is now and stay open, even if that means, for instance, operating at 50% capacity, than it is for those bars and restaurants to be closed down for an indefinite period of time if people aren't following the order. The law as it is in place that allows for the governor to make violations of her executive order a crime, according to the statutes that are in existence now, create that as a misdemeanor offense for a violation. So that's where the law stands now. Clearly the legislature, if they wanted to, could change that to make it a more severe penalty, but that is the penalty under the law as it exists now.
Would the legislature also have to enact a curfew, or is that in the future?
That, it's my understanding that's something that the governor could do under her emergency powers without the legislature having to become involved in that. Yeah.
Do you have a statement on casinos in the state essentially ignoring this 250 limit?
Well, obviously, whether it's casinos or any other types of businesses, we're going to be enforcing the law. We would urge any businesses in the state, including the casino operators, to heed the warnings of our governor and to follow the order, and again, to face strict enforcement in the event that they violate it.
What does strict enforcement look like?
Well, our plan again is to coordinate with, again, local, county, and state law enforcement, and to ensure that they are passing on all information about this to the Department of Attorney General. And, you know, just for an example of that is, you know, in the event that you have a bar, for instance, or any establishment, a restaurant, a casino that serves liquor, you know, they're under the control of the Liquor Control Commission. And if they violate the executive order, they're subject to having their liquor license revoked. I mean, that's a very serious consequence. So even if they're not interested in, you know, being shut down, and that's, or being charged with a misdemeanor offense, and that is not of great concern to them because they'd rather have the profits that often accompany St. Patrick's Day, which again, one of the biggest bar days of the year. We understand that, but they should know that they're subject to losing their liquor license later. And that's a pretty extraordinary reason to follow the law, and we hope that that will incentivize them to do the right thing.
St. Patrick's Day, I know already we've seen people at bars and restaurants. St. Patty's Day, that's only going to go up. Are you concerned? Are you worried?
Yes, I'm very worried. I should tell you that I have discussed this matter with President Stanley at Michigan State University. I've talked to board members at Wayne State and at the University of Michigan and other board members, trustees at Michigan State University to ask them if they would communicate to all their students and staff. But we are very concerned about it. And let's face it, extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. And the message that I want to relay, especially to some of the younger folks that are most interested often in going to St. Patrick's Day celebrations, is this. Your actions today affect the futures of your friends and your family members tomorrow. And by not violating these orders and by observing these strict social distancing and hand washing measures, the life that you save could be your own, or it could be the life of someone you love. And so to see it as those kind of circumstances, and I really don't see this any different, by the way, than, you know, we don't allow people to drink and drive, right? You cannot drink in excess of, you know, 0.08 blood alcohol content or higher. And we do that because we don't want people to hurt themselves, but we also don't want them to hurt anybody else. So we don't let people get on the road when they've had too much to drink for that reason. So, oh, am I not repeating the questions? Are you guys getting those? What should I do about that?
Folks have Facebook or not, so if you would repeat the question when it gets
Sure, I will do that. I will do that. Sorry, people on Facebook. So it's really no different, right? Because not only when you violate those tenets of safe social distancing and hand washing and all the rest of it, you're not just putting yourself at threat, you are putting everyone else in jeopardy as well. And we just hope that people will understand that. We, of course, you know, in normal circumstances, and even now, we want people to have a good time and enjoy themselves. But we need people to be safe. This is a precarious time for all of us, and we just really need people to appreciate that. And another thing I just want to add, I know that a lot of restaurants are going to be changing up a little bit and probably doing a lot more takeout than they've done in the past. And I'm just hoping that people will remember that so many people who are servers in the industry rely on tips. If you could tip your server, just even in delivery, when they're bringing the food out to your vehicle, please remember that they need to pay their rent, they need to pay their utilities, and please remember to tip them the same way that you would if you were dining in. Rick.
How quickly and severely could you act on bad actors that aren't living within these restrictions? What kind of, do you have emergency powers that you could utilize?
Okay, I think the question was how quickly could we act in the event that people violate this executive order. So what I will say is this, and I want to be honest with everybody. You know, the courts are closed in communities all over the state of Michigan. So we have to operate differently. And the other thing is, we're not looking to lock people up, especially given the fact that, you know, we are concerned, obviously, of the spread of the virus in county jails and in the Michigan Department of Corrections. But that doesn't mean we're not going to be enforcing this. And that doesn't mean that there are other sanctions that can't apply. And that does mean closure of businesses. And it does mean the loss of liquor licenses. And it does mean further penalties down the road. So we're hoping that people will look at this as a long-term measure and understand that the consequences down the road may be severe. And you may not be getting arrested on St. Patrick's Day, but that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be some significant consequences for you later.
Does this enforcement sort of extend to the individuals that are going to the bars, or are you guys going to be focusing on the proprietors of these establishments?
The question was whether or not we'll be focusing on the patrons of bars and restaurants or just the proprietors. And the answer to that is just the proprietors. We are not going to be citing people who are patrons. And frankly, even though they have a social responsibility to keep a distance from each other, it's up to the owners of these establishments to know when there's too many people that is in their bar or restaurant. Anyone else? Okay, well, great. Oh, Rick?
Just one more. I just want to be clear on this point. There's nothing you could do immediately where you see an operator not complying with the
Well, the thing that, I'm sorry, the question is, there's nothing that we can do immediately to ensure compliance or where we see somebody isn't compliant. I mean, the immediate thing that we're going to do is take down, well, law enforcement will take down all the information forwarded to us. I imagine if they have to, they will, you know, take additional measures to ensure that you don't have people who are in a crowded bar. But the biggest threat to them should be the long-term measure that they're going to see, which is, again, potentially the closure of their business. But again, I just want to say, and I'll just make this last point before we move on to the second part of our press conference, is that we, for the very most part, we believe that most businesses are acting appropriately and will continue to act appropriately. And they are our neighbors and our friends and our very good community members. And so this is not meant to be a threat to them. We just want to all act together in concert to fight off this virus, but to do our best to keep the economy going at the same time. So, let's just all act responsibly and in concert with one another, and I know that we're going to get through this acting together. So thank you very much, everyone. And let's move on to the price gouging portion, and thanks again for everybody who's in attendance.